Hey there, everyone. On this episode, I'm going to talk about the theory of operation of the Smart Charging System, SCS, or Regulated Voltage Control, RVC system for the 2016 Chevrolet Spark, and I will refer to this bad boy right here. That's right, the alternator or generator, as GM likes to refer to it in their service guide. I see these get misdiagnosed a lot for being defective. I've also misdiagnosed it on my Chevy Spark because I didn't have a good understanding on how the SCS or RVC system works, and when I installed the new alternator, I still had the same symptoms. You can imagine how disappointing that was, but in reality, there was nothing wrong with the alternator, or the battery, or the system itself, as I checked every component and it was performing as should. At idle, my headlamps would dim, and if I revved the engine, they would get bright again. And when I did a voltage check at the alternator and the battery, I was getting 12.5 volts at idle, which I assumed the alternator was not charging properly. And when I revved it up to around 2500 RPMs, I was only getting 13.1 volts. But the battery lamp on the dash never came on, and I never got a message on the cluster saying battery low or battery not charging. However, this is completely normal for this vehicle, and here is the service info from GM on the charging system explaining how it works. I highly suggest reading through it. But if you stick around, I will explain how it works by simplifying it with pictures and video. The alternator for this vehicle is a 12-volt 80 amp with the OAD or overrunning alternator decoupler style pulley. This allows it to free spin during deceleration to reduce wear on the serpentine belt and other components, and also has a torsion spring that absorbs vibrations from the crankshaft during hard acceleration. This can be identified by the black cap on the front of the pulley. Older style alternators used a OAP or overrunning alternator pulley. This system also allowed the alternator to free spin during deceleration but did not have a torsion spring or a black cover cap. Let's go ahead and see where the alternator lives. With the front of the vehicle raised and supported on jack stands, I will go under the vehicle and on the right hand side, past the oil pan just above the CV axle, is where the alternator is located. Now that we've located the alternator, let's go ahead and pop the hood and locate the battery. It's going to be in the engine bay on the left-hand side at the rear by the firewall. Now I'm going to use a battery analyzer to check the state of charge, or SOC, and the cold cranking amps, or CCA. This will give me an estimate on the state of health, or the SOH, of the battery. These are really inexpensive and you can pick one up for around $20. All you have to do is connect the black lead to the negative and the red lead to the positive. With the analyzer hooked up, I'm wanting to see 12.6 volts state of charge with the resting battery. That's what it's showing, so I know I have a good battery and I can continue on with testing. Now I will select what type of battery I have. In this case, this is a regular flooded battery. Then I will select the cold cranking amp rating. As you can see here, there are many different selections you can make, but I'm going to be looking for CCA. If you do not know your battery cold cranking amp rating, you can look on top of the battery. There will be a sticker that will tell you what they are. There's usually two different numbers. You're going to be looking for the lowest number, which is rated at 0 degrees. The bigger number is rated at 32 degrees. So in my case, I will set the cold cranking amp rating at 480 amps. Then I will select Enter and let it run through its testing procedure. As you can see here, this battery tested good. That means I have a good battery to keep going on with further testing. Now I'm going to select System Test. This is going to check the starter and the charging system. As you can see here, it says turn off loads, start engine. So before I start the vehicle, I will make sure that the stereo is off and that the headlamps are off. Make sure that the HVAC system is off and that the dome light is off. Now I will start the engine and let it run through its test. As you can see here, the cranking volts are good. It only dropped to 10.3 volts, which is in normal range. Now I will select Enter and we'll test the charging system. Press Enter again, make sure all loads are off, which we know they are. Hit Enter again. And alternator at idle volts is 14.4, which is in normal range. I will select Enter. Now it's telling me to turn on all loads and press Enter. So I will go back inside the vehicle and I'll go ahead and turn on the stereo and turn the blower motor on the HVAC all the way to high. Then I will go ahead and turn on the headlamps and the fog lamps. Then I'll turn on the hazards and then the dome light. Then I will press Enter to continue and then hold the accelerator pedal down to 2500 RPMs for about 10 seconds. Now I will check the analyzer. As you can see, the voltage dropped to 12.9 volts, which the analyzer is saying is low, but in the normal range. So why did this happen? Well, on startup, the charging system will charge in the high 14s, then after 30 to 45 seconds, it will drop off, and this range can be anywhere between 12 volts to 13.5 volts, depending on how much of a load is on the system and how fully charged the battery is. The charging system does not produce a constant 14.7 volts the entire time the vehicle is running. It will fluctuate between 12 volts and 15 volts throughout the time the vehicle is running, depending on what mode it is in and the state of charge of the battery and the load demand on the system. The battery analyzer is good for checking cold cranking amps and starting, but not so much for the charging system, as it fluctuates and could give you a false reading, even though the charging system is functioning as should. To get a true reading on the charging system, I'm going to use a voltmeter, which you can pick up at pretty much any store for around $25 to $30. The one that I'm using is made specifically for vehicles, and I've set the dial to 20 volts DC, and I'm going to get a reading on the battery with the engine off. Same as I did before with the battery analyzer, I'm going to connect the black lead to the negative terminal and the red lead to the positive terminal. The voltmeter is reading just under 12.6 volts, which is a good reading, so I will go ahead and start the engine. With the engine running, just after startup, the voltage will climb into the 14 volt range. This is to replenish the battery after startup. Then after 30 to 45 seconds, the voltage will start to decline between 12 volts and 13.5 volts, depending on the load on the system and the battery state of charge. Here I am turning the headlights on. As you can see, the voltage is starting to climb very slowly, and it will do so until it gets into the 13 volt range. Now I'm putting even more of a load on the system by turning on all the accessories, and you can see that it's only putting out around 12.5 to 13 volts. This is because the battery is fully charged and there's not a very high demand on the charging system at this time. Because I am setting idling, there is no reason to ramp up the alternator to full charge because the vehicle is not moving and we are stationary, so we can concentrate on putting the voltage elsewhere for components that are requiring a higher delivery of voltage. This is why the headlamps will be dim at idle, because it is giving voltage to other components that need it at this time that are more important. As I start driving and the RPMs go up between 1500 and 2500, the headlights will stay on nice and bright, and the voltage will fluctuate more between the 13 and 14 volt range. And now here you can see when I shut the headlights off and turn the load off on the system, the voltage will steadily rise to 13 to 14 volts again to start charging the battery. Being that there's no load on the system, it can concentrate on just charging the battery back up. And now here, I'm doing the same thing on the alternator. I've taken the red lead and put it on the positive stud on the back side of the alternator where the cable connects to it from the battery. And I've taken the black lead and put it on one of the alternator housing bolts. And I will run the exact same test. This will also do a voltage drop test, and I shouldn't see more than 0.1 to 0.3 of a volt drop between the battery and alternator positive cable, and this will also check the ground as the alternator grounds to the engine by the alternator housing. If I have more than 0.3 of a volt drop, I need to start checking cables and grounds, but as you can see, I am well within range. Now with the engine running, I will go ahead and turn on the headlamps and start slowly putting a load on the system. And as you can see, I'm getting pretty much the exact same results as I did at the battery. So, you may be asking yourself, how does it know when to turn on and off the alternator? Well, this little thing back here is called a current sensor, and the negative battery cable runs to the middle of it, and it measures the current flow that goes in or out of the battery, and also measures the temperature of the battery. Then it relays this information to the body control module, or BCM, and then that relays it to the powertrain control module, or the PCM, to regulate how much current flows in and out of the battery. So why does this exist? Why is it a thing? Simple answer. The EPA says the MPGs have to come up and the pollution has to go down. It takes a lot of fuel to produce electricity for the vehicle to run, and the less current the alternator has to make, the less fuel the vehicle will burn. Keep in mind that the charging system is smart enough to know when there is a problem, as it will illuminate the battery lamp on the dash and also give you a warning message on the instrument cluster as well. That is the one sure way to know there is an issue. And remember, if you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps the channel. And as always, thanks for watching. Since you made it this far, I'll go ahead and leave you with another tip. If you come out one day to start your vehicle and it doesn't start, or you see the battery light on the dash, go ahead and remove this plastic cover on the positive cable. Any one of these fuses can break and it will cause the vehicle not to start or charge.